My question for you is whether or not you were happy about your property tax bill that came in here just a little while ago for you. Was that a real pleasant experience? How about your car tax? Was that fun? My name is Gary Brose. I'm not a politician. I'm a business owner. I've owned over 24 different businesses in the last 40 years here in Seattle. And I've watched sometimes with horror at what's going on in the city. And when this latest election came up, I watched to see who was signing up to run and see who I thought might represent me and the things that I care about. I recognize fully that's not necessarily the same things everybody else cares about. I'm just telling you who I am. My concerns were mostly about business, about taxes, about the state of the city in terms of how safe it is, about our situation of law and order, homelessness, the drug scene downtown. Those things are what speak to me. And I didn't see anybody getting into the race that made me feel like they were going to represent what I cared. So I waited, and when nobody got in, I decided, okay, I'm wrapping up some of my business career anyway. I'm 65, I'm in good health. I know this city. I understand it. I understand how to manage people, how to work with people, how to get things done, how to stay within a budget. And that's what brings me to my main issue. This city, Seattle, right now, is pulling in more tax revenue than it ever has before in its entire history. I mean, by a long shot. And it's growing all the time. And yet, City Hall has got their hand out every day saying we need more taxes. We need to do this. We need to do that. We need to add the soda pop tax. We need to do now they passed the income tax, which isn't even constitutional. They're so hungry for taxes, they'll pass the ones that aren't even constitutional yet. Okay? And I know most of us are thinking, oh good, well, the income tax, whatever, that's only going to affect the fat cats. We all know how that always goes. It always comes down, they always tell us, well, it's just not enough money, so it's time to lower the threshold. And voila, in 5 or 10 years, we'll all get the privilege of participating in that. And what a deal that will be. And wait till next year when you get the property tax. I really think people are getting taxed to death in the city. Now, some of it we brought on ourselves. When we voted in ST3, I don't think everybody fully understood the impact of that and how much tax that was going to add on both the property tax and the car tax, but it's a lot. And I've talked to some people, and it's just, especially those on a fixed income, and it's a backbreaker. I am totally opposed to new taxes. I am totally opposed to the income tax. And I feel that with my experience in managing businesses and managing cash, that I can get into the city, I can manage what they have, I can reallocate the funds from those enterprises or departments that are not performing well or not giving us a big enough return on our investment in them, and put them towards the things that are really important. And to me, the main things that are important, besides getting the finances squared away and holding the line on taxes, the main things that are important are traffic. Downtown in particular, it's just gridlock, right? Something has to be done. We've got to get a transportation director in there who focuses on 4-wheeled vehicles instead of 2. And we have to get things moving again, and there are ways to do that. There's a lot of traffic 101 things that are not being done right now because this administration doesn't really want to do those things. So we got to get the traffic going. We got to clean the city up, and that includes helping the police, letting them do their job, getting body cams for them and the right equipment, going after the drug dealers and stopping that nonsense going on downtown, and helping the homeless in a much more expeditious way. So there's a lot of things we could do, but I believe fully that the city has enough money to do all those things without coming back to you again and again and asking for some more taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
I'm Casey Carlisle. I'm going to keep this brief. To sum up my entire
platform is the core belief that City Hall is exacerbating all existing problems and is creating new problems for the sake of its own enrichment. In addition, City Hall believes that philanthropy is its key function in government. And I don't want to sound like I'm a cold-hearted bastard. It's just the fact that philanthropy is not for governments. When government takes on philanthropy, costs go up for everyone, and the very same people that City Hall claims to care about end up being harmed. When government tries to be progressive, the net result is regressive. There are multiple examples. So I'm not going to even go into the very, every issues that I consider my top 3 or anything like that. I just really look forward to addressing your questions. Thank you.
My name is Greg Hamilton. I was born in 1965 right here in Seattle and grew up by High Point. 31st and Othello is where we lived, and went to Our Lady Guadalupe. I spent time as an Army Ranger and a Green Beret. I've owned a couple small businesses. In fact, I'm supposed to be attempting to build a business right now, and then this mayor's thing came up, and we decided that we couldn't stand what was going on so much that kind of put stuff aside and decided to run. I think that the mayor's job is exactly what it says in the city charter. The very first sentence is the mayor has a responsibility to uphold city and state law, contracts, and maintain order. That's the first sentence of his job. Then he's supposed to appoint the various heads of the city to do their jobs, and he's supposed to obviously manage them. I think first and foremost, we have to have a safe city, and for a variety of reasons, we are creating a very unsafe city. And there's no reason for it. It's by policy, not by circumstance. Half of the homelessness problem, at least, is not homelessness. It's a behavioral problem of criminal behavior. There are people that have resource issues that are actually homeless, that have slipped and fallen, and they need help up. Unfortunately, that is being concealed by a large group of people who are misusing the system and misusing our resources. And so I think first and foremost, the job of the mayor is to make sure we enforce the law. And we've not had a mayor for 4 mayors, and you all remember Mardi Gras, and you remember WTO, and that's when it started. That's when it started, when the mayors decided that we were not going to allow the police department to enforce the law anymore. And I believe that law enforcement's job is a crazy idea of enforcing the law. That's why you have them. That's why we call them that. And we're not enforcing our laws, and it's creating an unsafe situation. It's creating a drug situation that's massive. And I predict that if any of the front runners get elected, that our homelessness, our so-called homelessness problem, which is really a street vagrancy problem, will double in size within 2 years, and I bet the street drug problem will quadruple in size. That's what I see coming. And we all know that they're going to double down on everything they've done with transportation, and that's going to get worse too. So first and foremost, we're going to enforce the law and make the city safe. Second, we need to take a serious look at why we added 100,000 employees in our city and not 100,000 housing units, and why we weren't zoning things appropriately so that we could put people in the right places, so we weren't creating this massive traffic mess. And of course, that ties into actually my 4th campaign point, which is why didn't our schools produce the workers that could have had those jobs? Why do we have to import all these people instead of having our kids pack boxes in Kent in a warehouse for the people that are doing all the programming? So, 1, I think we need to enforce the law. 2, we need to work on housing seriously. The transportation issue is not going to be easy to solve if you've been in West Seattle long enough. Or if you've been in Seattle long enough, remember the freeway off-ramps to nowhere from the 60s and 70s. We've been making bad decisions on transportation for 50 years. It's doubtful we're going to get out of it in 4 years. No mayor, no matter how hard he tries, is going to fix the problem completely. But we have to start fixing the problem. And one of those is, like Gary said, we need to get a transportation director that's focused on performance. And so my job as mayor would not be pro-bike or pro-car, but to be pro-transportation and getting it moving, and whatever that means. And we have to look at all these things that we've been doing, like bicycle lanes or bus lanes, et cetera, and ask ourselves, are more people moving down the road or not? And if more people are not moving down the road, then whatever we just did was bad and a waste of money. And we need to do what will get more people moving on the roads. Interestingly, I looked up some of this road diet stuff, a crazy name, where they're putting all the bus lanes and bike lanes in, right? In half the places they put them in, it's actually worked very well. There's actually more people moving down the road than was before. Of course, what's the problem? Half the place they put it in, it doesn't work. And they won't reevaluate that because they're stuck with their ideology. So that's a little bit about me, and same thing, I'm, like Casey was saying, I'm more than willing to talk to you all you want and answer more specific questions, but here I am.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, well, thank you very much. We still may get a couple more, but we've got 3 great candidates here. Appreciate them here, so I'm just going to throw it to the floor. Any questions?
I would like to ask Mr. Carlisle, what is your experience that you bring to the job?
Sure. Like Greg, I'm a veteran. So I spent 5 years as an officer in the Army. Not nearly as long as 2 decades over here, but that is my leadership experience. Other career stuff I did was, I was in the wine industry for about 5 years. I was also working on some independent waste management consulting projects. So as far as the leadership aspect, that would be solely the time in the Army.
Interrupt real quick. Do we have this sign-in sheet still going around in here? It's being passed around? Okay. Next question?
Is it Mr. Brose?
Yes.
I'm kind of new. This is the first time I've ever been to this kind of an event, anything political.
You and me both.
I'm very upset with what's going on, and I love my city, and I grew up in Seattle. I think the big problem is our city council members. How does the mayor deal with the decisions that they're making?
And
Can everybody hear the question?
Oh,
so she asked what about the city council and the decisions they're making and how would the mayor deal with it. So obviously there are a few loose cannons on the city council, as I would call it, and generally speaking, I just tell people just because I don't feel like there's any reason to hide it. I'm a Republican. I'm a moderate Republican. That's like the boogeyman to the people on the city council. They would be very unhappy about that. But I am what I am. It's a nonpartisan position, so that's not supposed to matter. But everybody knows who people are after a little while. My concern with the city council is that I'm going to have to use an awful lot of my persuasion skills, one-on-one and as a group, that I've developed over 40 years in managing my businesses and working with my managers and employees. And it's not going to be very easy. I think that the main thing is that the mayor has the ability to veto the city council's decisions, and then they have to vote and score a high percentage, and that's escaping me right now, whether it's 7 or 8 that they've got to get to overthrow my veto. But there is some measure of being able to control them. And of course, if you can line up a couple of good council members that are, I don't want to say more rational, but more middle of the road, okay, which is where I'm sort of at, then I think that you can control that bit. As far as Kashana Sawant goes, I got to tell you that honestly, I'll just call it like it is. She's a bully. That's what has worked for her all her life. She just bullies her way through everything, and she's got everybody intimidated. And there's only one way to stop a bully, and that's to bully them back. And when they reach that stone wall and they try to punch through, and it doesn't work, then they start backing off, right? And all I can tell you is that I would be that stone wall. And she's the ringleader, and we just have to reach a point where we can work together, and I think everybody will see that. And I'll just say one last thing on that, is that I have found that, like for example, they want to help the homeless. Okay, that's cool. I want to help the homeless, all right? Now we're both in alignment, but the difference is I have different tactics in mind, all right? And most of that doesn't include spending wild amounts of money like they're doing now. But really what it comes down to then is, okay, we both agree we want to help the homeless in that example. Now let's just find common ground. Now that we've got the common ground, let's just find the right way to do that everybody can get on board with. Right? And sometimes you're not going to get everybody, but if you can get the majority, then you can move ahead with that. And the short answer is, it will not be easy.
We'll go ahead, we'll work in. We've just had Larry Oberto, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, arrive. So we allocated 5 minutes to everybody. If you want to use it all, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you say.
My name is Larry Oberto. My apologies for being late. I'm a one-man show. I just came from Kirkland. Traffic was fun getting there and pretty easy getting back. A lot of people ask why am I running, right? I've got a 100-year-old family business. I've enjoyed my life. This area has given my family of 5 generations, me being the third, a brilliant footing and backbone with all the unique cultures that it has and the diverse ideas and concepts and thoughts. And as much as Seattle grows and changes, the thing I miss about the old Seattle that really drives me is I remember I grew up in Brainerd Valley, Franklin High School, Beacon Hill, and the people there cared about what happened in Queen Anne Hill. They cared what happened over here in West Seattle. Yeah, we all took care of our own neighborhoods, but we were a city, we were a community. And what I see changing culturally is people are kind of bunkering into their flag of choice. And the ability to respect, because if I don't agree with your ideas or concepts, it doesn't make your idea or concept or mine any less valid. And it's bringing that unity back into Seattle so we can have good decision-making processes. In my family business, I've seen us grow and make so much money and then just blow it all. Just by bad decisions, the bad times will never come. Well, we're growing so we can expand, and then, oh, guess what? You just took on all this new debt and challenge, and everything gets tight. Seattle's on that course, I feel. They're drunk with money. They're stoned on money. They're no different than the crackhead asleep on your stoop. And the fundamentalness of that is they have all the added tax revenues from all the new people that have moved here. What, a couple 100,000? They got all the new tax revenues by just inflation and raising tax rates. They have all the new tax revenues from imposing new taxes, of which they preached to me my entire life how regressive sales tax is, and they turn around and don't even have the decency at the meeting I was at yesterday to throw anybody a bone of respect and say, you know what, I'll give you that soda tax back. Instead, we're just going to do more. So they're so addicted to growth, and I know Gary's probably seen that in business. Every building that's built is like slot machine Vegas money. And they spend it on consumables and crazy blank ideas. It's putting common sense and giving you, the taxpayer, value back for all that hard-earned money at whatever place we're at. And if we rebuild that public trust that the voters give us, or what I hope to be, as your candidate of choice, people aren't going to argue about an income tax. It'll be less relevant because the money will be spent productively to get a value return, and that's all anybody's really asking for. And we can change that dynamic, I believe, by good teamwork. And my other background is racing, and I've been on race teams that have won championships where we eat dinner every night, and I've been on race teams we won championships that unless I forced everyone to go to dinner on Sunday night, nobody wanted to deal with each other. But they all know what their goal is. They all know their job. And they all have the control and empowered to do it in a way that's effective for the financial assets they have, the concrete assets they have, and the manpower they have. And by doing that, you minimize errors and you win championships. I want to do that for Seattle.
Thank you.
Can I take a stab at the city council question?
I'm sorry?
Can I take a stab at our city council questions? How we're gonna handle
Absolutely,
that?
yeah, we're gonna throw it back to questions, so,
All right, I
yeah,
think,
go ahead.
There are people in the city council that have given up hope. They're basically just riding it out until their terms are done because they're surrounded by such crazy people. So I think one of the reasons you're seeing these unanimous votes is a couple people have given up hope. I think if we have the right mayor, some of those people are reachable and would have hope again and would fight back. And then truthfully, the people that really need hope are the citizens of the city. And if they had hope, next year they'll elect different people on city council, and the next year different people on city council, and we'll get rid of the problem people. And like Gary said, there's some of them that are just plain bullies. And my first 4 years in the Army was as an Army Ranger, and I can guarantee there's nobody on city council that can out-yell me, out-swear me if required, and out-bully me. And some of them do need to be bullied back, absolutely. And it is unacceptable for the mayor to be interrupted. It's unacceptable for people to talk over people in those settings, and those people are going to have to be shut up, basically, to just put it simply. They're children, and they need to get set to the children's table. And so that's one of the ways we're going to handle them, is we're going to have to socially shame these people also. I think we're really missing out in Seattle on what we should be doing, which we're supposedly a technology hub, and the city's website looks worse than my first business website in 1996. There's no reason we aren't communicating information to our people directly. Why the mayor couldn't, of course, this mayor doesn't want to communicate directly with people, but I would want to talk to everybody every day and say, this is what's going on. This is the person that's the problem. And we need to bring leverage on them to make them stop being a problem, to expose them, to expose the special interest groups that are giving them campaign donations. You know, it's all very hidden right now in the city budget, but you look at, there's organizations that get $3 million or $10 million or $20 million every single year from the city. And of course, those organizations have 20 employees that all give maximum donations to various politicians. That stuff needs to be brought out in the light so we understand why people are voting certain ways. And we get people mad enough that we change things. That's what needs to happen. Seattleites are very good at being frustrated and not doing anything about it. Right? We get very frustrated and then we just go, well, let's just ignore it. It'll go away and the next people will do a better job. And it hasn't happened, right? We have 4 mayors got worse and worse and worse and worse. And now we've got one that has a 99% chance of being a serial pedophile, and everybody wants to ignore it. Everybody wants to say, well, let's just pretend, let's just wait till he goes away. Well, if we do that, if we just ignore it, we're just going to elect another person that's got the same playbook, just wearing a different suit. And I think we have to quit ignoring the fact that we have made some errors in electing people in the past. And we need to step up and elect the people that will really do the job.
Okay.
I'd also like to add to that, if that's okay, just real
Yeah,
quickly.
I'm gonna introduce a topic here, but
Okay.
yes, if somebody would like to
Yeah.
add to that.
So I
for 3
agree
minutes, yes.
with the vast majority of what Gary, Greg, and Larry have said, but I think a big factor too is transparency. So if a lot more people are aware of the mayor's positions, then it's not just the mayor going to bat against the council, it's thousands of people going to bat against the
We also
council.
have the Seattle Times you have to deal with
Yeah,
too.
which is
So-
basically an extension of the government. Yeah,
Exactly.
but the other thing I want to point out that I wish Harvey was here because he said this in a previous forum, and that is, as far as transparency is concerned, it is greatly hindered when these public meetings at City Council are held in the middle of a workday. So who shows up? Unemployed people applauding an income tax who will never see the effect of it. So it's like, I want, what Harvey has said in the past is, I want these public meetings to be at night, where everyone is there, instead of just paid interest being there, like paid, basically paid protesters to just flood the entire council chamber. So I don't know if I don't really agree on the take of like bullying, because you can only go so far, but I feel like if the more transparent it is, the less bullying you will have to do, I would say. Thank you for letting me.
Sure, yeah. Anybody else have something that they feel strongly about adding at this point? If not, I'd like to introduce a topic to you. I'm a traffic engineer. I also on the board of the West Seattle Transportation Coalition, along with my other fellow board member, Mark, over there. So I just kind of want to ask you, obviously here in West Seattle, it's one of our biggest challenges is access to this via the one bridge that we have. We have many challenges. So I'd like your thoughts on problems unique to West Seattle, Sound Transit 3, other transit issues, and maybe just even kind of aside the gas tax and what your thoughts on that or other funding mechanisms. I'm just going to kind of throw it to the group. Jerry, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Okay. So I understand from what I've heard that the metro bus system has decreased service to West Seattle during the last 5 years or so, and that there's certain parts of it that are not really getting any adequate service at all right now, and which is odd to me because generally speaking, the government is supposed to be really pushing hard on the mass transit cuts. So I don't know what their strategy really is or why they're doing that, but it's a pretty simple fix when you don't have all these games that are being played. So you can go back in and say, finding out from people, having you people tell us, what do you need? And then I'm just kind of perplexed as to why we can't solve that. And I think we gotta do that. But it's also from my perspective too, it's the problems with the gridlock downtown that goes on from 4 to 6 p.m. or longer every day. There are a whole lot of different things that aren't being done now that used to be done. We're not synchronizing the lights. We're not allowing red turns right turns on reds in lots of different places downtown, and that's primarily because there's all the pedestrian traffic. I think employing some traffic cops in key intersections and doing a better job of managing the pedestrians so that they're not a roadblock, one more roadblock for the cars. I think there's essentially a lot of traffic 101 things we can do, and as you relieve the tension and the stress of the gridlock downtown, I think you see a ripple effect throughout the city. We just got to get the city moving again, and I think a brand new transportation director who is not focused on bicycles like Scott Kubley is mandatory, and that would be one of the first major steps. And then we really need to sit down and hear from the community, and I'm sure you already have voiced your opinion to the city, but I haven't heard it, about what you need up here in West Seattle. The Lander Street overpass or whatever it is that you think will really start relieving the pressure, but you are on a little peninsula over here, and the city forgets that.
Casey?
Well, this is not an overnight fix. So as much as I would like to tell you that I have this brilliant plan that will alleviate traffic in the next 2 years, it's not happening. So I'm not gonna lie to you. So something I'm very interested in is, and this does not relate solely to West Seattle, it's in the entire city, but zoning. So zoning and building use, building codes, building restrictions, like that plays a huge part. So because City Hall has this delusional belief that it can control growth, we end up having these problems with congestion. So this whole upzoning, when the City Hall says, hey, we're going to upzone this place, but not this place, well, now that place that is not upzoned is now disadvantaged. I want to allow every single neighborhood the opportunity for economic development. So if that means upzoning the entire city, so be it. If that means getting rid of zoning altogether, so be it. It is not for me or anyone here to tell anyone else what they can or cannot do with their property. So right now I believe City Hall is trampling property rights. I would prefer to respect property rights. So as far as the long-term solution, get rid of these zoning that really just fuels traffic congestion. And then there's also this 200-year-old idea out there. It is called a land value tax. It has been implemented to some extent in Pittsburgh. This idea is you tax only the land, not what is on it. So that incentivizes denser growth, which is both greener and also removes the reliance on commuting via cars. Again, not an overnight fix, I get it, but I'm not in this for the quick fixes. I want to propose long-term solutions, whether they are popular or not.
Greg?
Well, I grew up here in West Seattle when the original bridge got hit. when it was up, right? So I understand being stuck in West Seattle. Everyone right now, it appears, in city leadership has an ideological belief that we are going to have a carless future. That's what they want. And it's not here. And who knows if it'll ever be here. I doubt it'll ever be here. Honestly, if we could reduce the number of people driving by 50% in 20 years, that would be an incredible feat. The problem is we're going to double the population in the time, which means we have the exact same number of cars on the road, which means we haven't reduced congestion. So we're going to have to figure out some other strategies besides just the idea that we're going to make people not drive. Public transportation has to work, or people are not going to take it. And if we look at the number of people taking public transportation, the number of people over the years has gone up, but the percentage of the population has not changed significantly. We have the same percentage of the population using public transportation right now than used it 20 and 30 years ago. And you're going to have to do some hard work and some painful work, because we're going to have to make up for, once again, about 50 years of bad decisions to fix our public transportation system. But we need a public transportation system that functions so well that people want to use it, or they're never going to get on it. It's not doing anyone any good to ride a bus when the bus sits in the same traffic as the car. So we've got to make things move. And we need to embrace the idea that a lot of what we're building with bus and train routes are actually routes, not necessarily the technology that will go on them, because technology is changing so fast that I believe in 10 to 20 years, what is on these routes will look vastly different from what we believe. I think we're going to have driverless vehicles that are properly ownerless, that probably link together and create basically trains that you can punch your app and get on the thing, and it'll be extremely efficient, but those have to have their own routes to be efficient. And I think that's kind of what we're doing with bus lanes, and even with surface rail and even with elevated rail. I don't think that they will necessarily in 20 years look anything like a train. But we still have to build the routes, or it's never going to move. Unfortunately, I think that a couple generations of people were short-sighted and didn't vote to get things done back when it should have got done, and now we're kind of holding the bag, and it's going to be very expensive, but we don't have a choice, I don't think. And if not doing it for us, then we're going to have to do it for the future generation, which wasn't done by the past generations, unfortunately, with transportation. Also, we do need rezoning, because if people that work in Seattle don't live in Seattle, and people that live in Seattle don't work in Seattle, we're never going to fix transportation. So we have to fix the housing to fix the transportation, in my opinion. So that's my basic answer.
Larry?
Well, I'll give you my idea, philosophy, viewpoint, and then when all this is over some future day, I do want to hear your reality to what I think my reality is, because that's how you learn it, right?
3 weeks.
Seriously. I think a lot of times we've missed opportunity, right? We missed opportunity before I was born, basically, on building proper mass transit under or over. And anytime you put mass transit that doesn't have rubber tires and called a bus at grade, you're just taking away prime real estate to do other stuff to serve the people, whether it's a bike, walk, or a car. Cars aren't going to disappear. It's a nice concept, but I believe human nature is pretty individualistic and likes that flexibility. If I mention the word monorail, it becomes very emotional for a lot of people. But I look at it in kind of Larry's little fantasy land, if you take the emotion out of it, that it was a prime opportunity that would have linked 3 different unique neighborhoods of Inner Seattle, West Seattle, and Ballard, where people could have easily gotten and hopped on, gone to 35th, jumped on a place, gone to Ballard for dinner, popped downtown, seen a show, and been home. And yet it got caught up into that Seattle, we won't even go there because we all know that. This area is landlocked. I understand that. When the viaduct comes down because of transit planning, Seattle's going to grind to a halt. That's the reality. My understanding growing up by I-90 is transit time has never really been a function of roads and transit. It's just about numbers. And as they stole lanes that were excess capacity, it's because it was based on this philosophy. And based on that, they weren't lying to you. Let's assume there's 4 lanes going down 2nd Avenue, and there's 50,000 cars a day, right? If they take 2 lanes for something else, they're still serving the same 50,000 cars a day. And they just expect, like, bam, magic. Everybody else is going to jump on a bike or a bus or whatever thing doesn't exist, okay? But that's not reality. The first thing I would do is remove the conflict and impediments that exist that function at cross purpose. Go up to Broadway and tell me that is any kind of efficient use of transportation. I've got trolley, I've got car, I've got pedestrians that are zombies walking into the street. I've got, right? We're trying to serve everyone, and then rather than designing it effectively and efficiently, where somebody has a proper corridor, they put them all at cross purpose. And even if I give the bicyclist here and the car here, and I'm giving their own lane, you just instill the sociological idea of entitlement. And when that entitlement comes to a crisscross, the bike's always going to lose, but they don't know how to drive defensively. And the car guy's defensive or distracted. So we've got to remove some of the inner city impediments, not to take away your favored part of transportation, because that core backs up, and guess what? It backs up all the way out to this bridge. And that's the first thing we can do. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'll throw questions back out to the floor. Right there.
This is more of a philosophical question. Why are people poor? I'd like to hear from each of you.
Who's first?
Well, I don't want to be first on this one, but I'll do it anyway. It's an interesting question, and I will say nobody's asked that question in all the events that I've gone to, and these guys have been there most of the time too, so that's an interesting one. So, off the top of my head, I would say that a good part of that goes back to education, to not getting a quality education for whatever reason in grade school and high school, and I've always thought that we ought to be teaching, at least in high school, we ought to be teaching more about life and about how to move out of the school years and into a job and in looking in the real world, how to balance your bank account and how to do all those basic things, how to create a budget, right? And things that affect their ability to make quality decisions about their money. A lot of the studies on homeless people, for example, have found that the majority of the homeless aren't drug addicts or crazy or something like that, even though it seems like that is more of what we see. The majority are people who were living paycheck to paycheck, had no safety net, had an emergency crises of some kind or health problem or something that drained their money, and then suddenly they couldn't make their rent payment or their mortgage payment anymore. And that is something that we need to somehow teach people more about how to do that. And in fact, one of the things we've talked about doing is when you have the counselors working with these people to get them back on their feet again, give them some subsidized housing or whatever so that they buy some time to get their jobs back and get their life together a little bit, that they're doing more of the counseling on that kind of thing, right? This is what you got to do. You got to save a little bit here in case something bad happens, develop some safety nets, figure out what you're going to do in case something goes wrong. And a lot of people I don't think are thinking that. So I think mostly it's an education thing and a thought process that we're not conveying well. That's what I have to talk about.
Quick interruption. Has everybody signed the sign-in sheet? No. Where's it at?
Thanks for going first.
Yeah.
Where did it stall?
This table.
Where did it stall at?
It's under you. Sir, it's under you.
Okay. Sorry, anybody else want to take that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like you said, I've never been asked this question. You said you're a pastor, is that? Philosophy, cool. So I think there are two reasons Some people are born into it. You can be born into money, you can be born without money. And then I think the other reason is personal decisions. Correct me if I'm wrong, if there's another reason, but I am a big proponent of allowing people to make their own decisions in life and dealing with those consequences. Trying to ensure that no one is poor, you will basically ensure that everyone is poor. That's socialism. I'm not a fan. But I really can't. It's such an interesting question, but I hope I haven't offended anyone.
I think it's, well, obviously poverty is non-monolithic, right? So there's no one reason. And we can't say what causes it. We can say what correlates with it, right? So we know the correlations. We can all name them probably. Lack of high school graduation, single parent families, drug use, crime, the age at which people have children. All these things correlate, but none of them cause, right? So the best job we can do as a society is try to provide opportunities where people don't pick the routes that correlate with poverty, right? We provide a situation where people don't pick the route of drugs or crime and a variety of other things. And I think one of the ways we do that is providing hope and opportunity and people believing that their education is actually going to lead to a job, which is actually going to lead to a house, which is actually going to lead to a family, etc. And right now, there's a lot of people that don't feel like that's going to happen. They don't feel like they can invest in themselves and get anywhere because things have become so outrageously expensive. I think we also need to think about going right back to things like traffic. If we make everyone in this city sit in traffic for an hour to 2 hours more a day, what's going to happen to the performance of their children in school in 10 years? We know that when we don't invest time with our children, we're going to, once again, that's going to correlate with lack of performance in school, that's going to correlate with being seduced by drugs, that's going to correlate with being seduced by crime. And so something as simple as a traffic problem has generational effects, quite possibly, if we don't get it fixed. We need to provide the opportunity for people to be with their families. We need to provide a safe city so people aren't stressed about their safety, right? Right now, people can't be joyous with their family in many cases because they go out and they're surrounded by people that they're afraid of. And that's wrong. We shouldn't have an unsafe city. So I don't think there's one answer to poverty or why people are poor. I do think the government has some amount of a job in that, though. I think it's in our best interest, even though it's expensive, it's in our best long-term interest to do things like have vouchers for after-school care and things like that, because if we don't take care of these kids, once again, they have a much better chance in 5 or 10 years of turning into a high cost of being a criminal or a drug user, and we don't want that. We want to intervene at a young age and help them, and we want to be able to help these families. And so one of our jobs is to make hard decisions about spending some money up front to help people so that it doesn't turn into long-term problems. I mean, that's not the only reason we help people, obviously, but from a pure economic standpoint, we need to look at what the cost is if we don't help people in 5, 10, or 20 years, and that's way more expensive than helping people.
Yeah. You know, there's been homelessness before, during, and after Christ, and we're not that smart. Like, we're not. I think we have to realize we're not going to think and spend our way out of it. It's not going to happen.
But why are people poor?
Life isn't fair. Different opportunities. Some people take advantage of opportunities. Others miss opportunities. Some self-medicate themselves. But overall, I think the common theme is not everybody is a hard-charging, self-motivated person. Some people just need a little guidance, a little mentorship, somebody to say good job, and to set down guidelines to help them know there's a track for success and an opportunity. And that being on different levels is okay if you can find ways that people can make enough money to live their life at the level they live at. My dad always told me the only time you have a recession is when you spend more than you make. No matter how much you make, Larry, if you outspend it, you're basically got a recession. And that's how you weather a recession.
That's a status quo.
You know,
Do you have an answer to this question?
I mean, I have a lot of thoughts. Yeah, but you're correct. Jesus said the poor will be with you always. But he wasn't talking about why people are poor.
John?
I think, one of you said, City Hall is very good at being frustrated, and I've heard a lot of frustration tonight. And I've heard everyone talk about issues of homelessness, poverty. I thought it would be, I'd like to hear from you guys if any of you have any specific policy proposals to deal with the homelessness issue. Like, whether you think that's from poverty or whatever you think the source is, like, what are you gonna do about it specifically? Go ahead.
The thing I would benchmark with people that are doing it is, the concept is, so we saved the 50 million's what we got. How do we catch the people that first fall into trouble? They lose their home, they self-medicate because of pain, they fall into drugs because something goes haywire in their brain. We all know somebody, whether it's family, a friend, we all have been there. And not everybody has a family member that can catch them or has the money to take care of them. So we first take care of that so the chronic homeless don't become their peers. And then the next level that we take with that help of psychologists and addiction counselors and whatnot is to offer the help to the people that we see roaming around now, and give them help. And the ones that don't have help, I mean, and I don't mean to be degrading, but I think you have to set some guidelines, like a special need kids in your house or a kindergartner. If you're going to live in our society, there's a basic rule and trade-off here. You know, when we camp, it's clean camping. And we try to teach and build them up. So at minimum, if they tread lightly on our neighborhoods, it's a start.
So, just to keep it specific, like, is that funding homeless shelters? I mean, in the spirit of catching people as they fall out of the safety net, what's the policy that will help do that? As mayor, like, what's your policy? What's the law?
I'm not trying to skirt it. I think, and I come from race team background. You got to empower the people we have and assume they're smart and they know, and retrain their focus on what we're trying to solve in that matrix.
So are there organizations that exist today that you want to increase the funding for or change the training for? I'm just trying to.
I don't want to increase funding till we can do. I don't want to take any more money from anybody till we can get more for the money we have. And my fear is with warehousing the homeless, which is put by some groups used to be their tagline, is at some point in time, if this charity group can only function with government money from the city, state, county, feds, they're a de facto government program. And then how do you empower them to be more part of society, helping society, and less part of government?
So, I'd like to jump in. Once again, we have non-monolithic issue. I went out with Human Gospel Mission about 3 weeks ago because I wanted to see some things for myself. And we went out and gave things to 150 people on the street. You know, gave sandwiches, socks, etc., etc. And it gave them an offer of shelter. One person out of 150 wanted shelter. So we have different groups of people. There's the people that are making us angry right now, that are living on our streets, are not homeless from a resource standpoint. They're homeless from a behavioral standpoint. We have some organizations, most of them privately funded, that have high success rates. That's why they have high success rates. They're privately funded. People like Vision House has people stay there with their families for 6 to 18 months. They have like an 84% rate of people getting back on their feet, right? We have organizations that are very, very successful. They're very successful because they get private funds. The organizations that get public funds, most of them need to be defunded. What they are is giant graft machines. They're taking our money every year. They do some gala fundraiser where they actually raise maybe 1% of their money. They get 99% from the taxpayers, from the city giving it to them. They have executive directors, they have staffs, they have everything else. And mostly what they do with that money call it the giant self-licking ice cream cone. Mostly what they do with that money is re-lobby the city to get more money, and they don't show any performance. So a couple things, we need to solve our criminal problem as one thing. That's a completely different thing than helping people that have slipped. And we need to, if we're going to give money to any organizations, they need to show performance. And I do agree that the faster you catch people, the better, because once they do get surrounded by a peer group, it's going to be much more difficult. The other thing is the idea that all these people are from here is a complete lie. Absolute lie. Even the ones I talked to that I asked them where they're from, and they said they're from here. I said, well, where'd you go to high school? Well, I went to Edmonds. I went to Everett. Oh, I went to Portland. So, you know, we're hearing these statistics about people being from here, but you got to realize that these people are self-reporting, and then the questions that are being asked are very unusual. People are coming here because we are providing resources, and we can't, as a 700,000 people, we can't provide resources for a 7 million person state, and we can't provide resources for a 330 million person country. We have to draw a line somewhere. We have to say a circle of who gets our resources and who doesn't. And it would be in our best interest to actually spend the money to help people get back to their natural support groups. That would be cheaper for us to do than to keep them here. We have to create an incentive for them to go where they can get help. We have to create an incentive for them to get help. And we have to tell people, and the same thing, we have to have a minimum standard. A society is allowed to have a minimum standard. And having people defecate on their front porch is well below the minimum standard that we're allowed to have as a society. We have laws for a reason, and we're not enforcing those laws by policy, and that is creating a new minimum standard that none of us agreed to. And it's creating law by policy, and that's not how laws are supposed to be changed. There's supposed to be a different process for changing laws. It's much more difficult. So we need to enforce the law, and we need to help people, but we can't enable criminal behavior. Now we're about to start heroin sites, which is just ludicrous.
So, to answer your question directly, I'm not going to do anything. And I don't say that to be facetious. My point is, it is not the role of government. Once again, people believe that the city of Seattle is going to spend $60 million on homelessness this year. That's not true. $60 million is going to go to NGOs that Greg touched on. $60 million equates to over 19 grand per homeless person. They're not seeing that. Guess how much Houston spends on homelessness? $0. So I want to spend $0 on homelessness. When the government says philanthropy is not our function, they focus only on the basics, public safety, water, electricity, and roads. It needs far less tax revenue to take in, meaning Seattleites have far much more money in their pockets, and they are better able to be philanthropic. What drives me crazy, this could be any issue, when someone says, I care about the homelessness so much that I want the government to force everyone to care, that is pessimistic, lazy, and pretentious. I can tell you why later. So yeah, I'm not going to do anything. We're going to stop this $60 million. It's going to go to $0. We are going to end these city-sanctioned homeless encampments. That's going to go to $0, not 6, not 9, not 12. It's going to go to $0. Again, this sounds cruel, but it is far less cruel than what we are currently doing, which is enriching NGOs while the homelessness problem only continues to worsen. So if we focus on the basics, we leave people alone, people will then be incentivized to be philanthropic. Government's the middleman. Why would you pay any middleman to do something? When citizens can directly help, you will get the greatest outcome.
Any other questions?
May I ask one?
Absolutely.
There's going to be a forum.
I've got one comment.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I kind of looked, you didn't seem like you wanted to. I didn't want to force you to.
So trying to answer your question, a little bit of everything they said, okay? But it seems to me that what's happened is we spent $60 million last year on the homeless problem, and it just got worse. We've enabled them, and I don't know about you, but every time I enable somebody, it doesn't work well. That just leads to more problems. We let them put their tents wherever they want to put them. We need to lay the rules down and be very firm about it. Nobody wants to be firm because it's not fun being firm. But we have to do that. It's for their own good and for ours. So we have to be firm, maybe not as firm as Casey's saying, although I can see the merit in it, because you can see what happens with cities that are not really particularly doing anything. Well, the homeless don't go to that. So you gotta find that happy medium, I think, and you find a way to rapidly rehouse the people who qualify and help everybody else understand that there's nothing here for them and they need to move on. Okay? So the people who are truly trying to get their life together, I think the solution to the issue, the biggest policy change I would make is the city's done a great job of building massive overhead and hiring a lot of people to manage this process, right? And so if they say they're spending $60 million on the problem, my guess is that 30 or 40 million of that is going to their own overhead. It's not all going to the people that need it. So my thinking is that you rapidly rehouse into existing, in this case, most likely apartments, right, or houses for rent for those families or people that qualify for that. And then you agree with the landlord to pay directly to them X% of the rent. And you give them 1 year, 18 months, whatever the maximum amount of time is that we think it makes sense to just get their life together, get their full-time job in place, and start making some money, right? They pay as much as they can, but they also should be able to save some. And then you're helping those individuals, and then after that time is up, they need to move on their own and get some. And if they still can't do it, well, then that's like the third strike. Well, we did what we could, and I'm not sure what the phraseology is, but it's something along the lines of there's the road. And somebody has to be firm enough to do that.
Okay.
So if I may,
Yep, we're about 6 minutes over, but I'm fine continuing on for a bit more.
Mine's very
Patrick,
quick.
you have a question?
this weekend is West Seattle Summerfest. Sustainable West Seattle
You're the
is
moderator.
having, pardon me?
You're the moderator?
No. Sustainable West Seattle is having their forum. How many of you will be at that forum?
I'm hoping they accepted my late.
And I'm sorry, you
I
are?
don't know.
You don't know yet. Thank you.
It sounds like fun.
Like I said, I'm fine continuing on for another 5-10 minutes. Yep.
Yeah, can a more centrist business candidate get elected?
Yes. I think so.
Depends on how-
You
depends
guys
if
talk
the-
that through because it hasn't happened for a while.
Well, the people of Seattle have never been this pissed either, so we could see change. The thing is that if everybody that said it can't happen actually voted, it would happen. We have the lowest voter turnout rate in the nation in our city. It's from lack of hope. And we could change that instantly. Somebody is going to advance to the primary with probably only 20 to 30,000 votes. It's the only time in history that we've had this opportunity. So it depends on how mad people are. And whether they realize that most of the so-called front runners are going to double down on all the stupidity that we've been doing on every subject we've been talking about. And if people can get that through their heads, and once again, if everyone that told me that what I'm doing is not possible voted, I'd win. It's that easy, right? So
I'm trying to nail it home that any of the 6 chosen ones by the Seattle Times and the Stranger, I call it the Stranger Times.
Yeah.
If any of the 6 anointed ones, it's Murray's second term.
Yeah.
So I think that is trying, that point right there, I think will help people wake up, because you vote for one of the 6, you get the same, which is Murray.
You're going to get double the crime, double the homelessness, 4 times the drug problem, I guarantee you, within 24 months.
And
Anyone
I
gets
think
elected.
some of them are more interested in building their political career than worried about Seattle.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that got me to run. You know, growing up in Rainier Valley definitely made me a bit quirky for a short Italian. But I think there's room for that quirkiness and never say die attitude. And that's why you see us. That's why you see 21 people. Think about it. There's a handful of clones, different flavor of the same thing. And you got 17 people that all, no matter how different we are, there is a common reason why they're all running. Even people I don't agree with. I'll even put Nikita Oliver in that pile. Even though I don't agree with her. She's running for the same reason we're running, more or less. Things are messed up and they need to change.
Questions?
comment. The comment is, I'm here tonight because I saw Greg's commercial on TV. Gary, I'm sorry.
Gary's.
And I Googled you and I go, wow, it's here tonight. So, I mean, I'm serious. You guys got to get out there.
Yep.
And the question is, what happens in August? Do they narrow it down to 5 people?
Two.
So this is very
Top
crucial.
2 vote
This
getters
is
move on to the general election. And frankly, we're all business oriented and we all can do our math. And the reason we're here is because we did the math and said, aha, what's going to happen is it'll take a lot fewer votes to get to probably the number 2 spot. Right? Jenny Durkin's the front runner. Everybody seems to love her. And she'll be another.
Endorsed by Murray.
And she just
Yeah,
got
she'll be another
$50,000
Um,
dumped in her lap.
And so what happens is it's just a numbers game. Generally speaking, all the other candidates are on the left. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
If there's anybody here on the left side, that's okay. I'm just telling you where they are. but they're on the left, and so they're going to siphon votes away from each other. One of us certainly have an opportunity to score enough votes so that we actually finish up in the number 2 spot. Then we go to the general election, and it's a whole different ballgame. Now it's just one-on-one, and although if it's Durkin, she will have a huge lead, then, my thinking is maybe people are pissed off enough, excuse my French, but that's just angry.
And I'll say it,
And they may be ready to vote.
I'll say it for Gary, you saw his ad, it takes money to run the ad, right? And if you believe in Gary, and you want to see more ads and try to get more of you to support him, then pitch in. And it doesn't matter on the amount, even $3. The media looks and goes, Jenny Durkin has 500 people. Like it's a big deal. 700,000 people in the city, 500 is not even relevant, right? So if he gets 500 people at $1 a pop, all of a sudden he gets more credibility. And the same goes for the rest of us. So anything you do, like I say, even if it's $1, it rings the bell that you believe in the person, and that helps us get noticed.
We're mad enough that we'll even support whoever one of us advances. As much as we're competing, we're all throwing in behind whoever makes it, because that's how mad we are. It's not about us, it's about the fact that something needs to be done.
Take back our city.
Absolutely.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming. So we're very honored that you came to our community, that you cared enough about what was happening here.
Thanks for having us.
We're very grateful that we could give you guys an opportunity, because I'm sure there's not maybe as many as you might like. So, but a big round of applause for everybody.